Is this going to be the record if they win this one?
26th Street. Wow.
I'd sure like to win 26 something straight.
I was going to say. How about 13?
That team here in Montana, like the girls basketball team. How
Oh.
many games are in?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't been following it.
Hundreds. But they found without losing.
Are they like Class C?
Yeah,
Class C? Did everyone have a chance on the commission to read the supplements that Ed provided for us? Right. Everyone ready? Okay. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
I'm present.
Commissioner Hoagland, here, Commissioner Reddington,
Here.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, we have a full agenda tonight, so let's get started. First order of business are consent items. Is there a motion from the commission for consent items?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent items.
Motion by Friedman
I'll second that.
and second by Reddington. Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Motion passes. Tonight, there are no proclamations. There are no scheduled public comment. There's no public hearings, and there are no ordinances. We do have 4 resolutions, however. The first resolution is resolution number 4532, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign collective bargaining agreement with ASME Local 2711A for a period from July 1st, 2014 through July 30th, 2016. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, this item came before the City Commission for the first time at your last meeting. As we discussed then, the administration started negotiating with AFSCME in approximately April, May of last year. Wasn't that it was a very contentious negotiation. However, there were some rather long administrative delays on their side. And so that kind of made scheduling difficult. As a result of that, we have recently reached final agreement on the collective bargaining document that's in front of you this evening. And, we have provided a fiscal note with that. and then we'll certainly be willing to take any questions from the city commission.
All right, very good. Do we want to start with a motion? Is there a motion from the commission?
I make a motion, we pass resolution 4532.
I second.
Motion by Friedman, second by Stern. Commission discussion. Mr. Fried, Commissioner Friedman.
Also,
All set. Commissioner Stern. You're set. Commissioner Reddington.
I'm good also, thank you.
Commissioner Hoagland.
I'm okay, thanks.
What is with this?
You have them.
Okay. What can I say? So this goes from last July.
That's correct.
So it's,
The
Pro-
raises get backdated until July 1st of 2004.
okay. All right. So this is a 2-year contract as compared to a 3-year. What was the factor that made the difference?
That's a good question, Mr. Chair. I'm not exactly sure that I know why AFSCME ended up requesting a 2-year contract, and know that towards the end of our negotiation period, AFSCME became very interested in what I would call most favored nation language that you'll find in some contracts. And basically what that is that you'll have that phrase in the collective bargaining agreement that will say, in the event that another collective bargaining group gets a better wage increase than we negotiated for, we get that same increase. They became very interested in that language, and then we talked with them for probably a couple of months back and forth. The administrations could simply not get good with that for many different reasons. And so as we got towards the end of the negotiation period, they simply said, well, we'll just request 2 years as opposed to 3 then. And that's really all that I know.
Okay. All right.
Typically our period is 3 years.
Okay.
Most of our agreements.
So since this backdates to 2014, 15, 16, so we'll see this again next year.
You would see this again sometime probably in 2016. Yes, sir.
Towards the end of the year, most likely, or before, if it's
Well,
supposed to start in July.
If we're going to start in July, it would be before. Historically, AFSCME has not gotten the negotiations done in time to start in July 1st. At least in the 9 years I've been here, it's never been my experience. So it usually, with AFSCME, it almost always ends up being a backdated situation. It's never been this late before, but usually it is at least into October.
And have we started on any other of the other 2 contracts?
No, sir.
Okay, and when are those ready to be renewed? What's the dates on those? Can you call that out of your memory?
I think we have one more year left on the IAFF contract. I would have to look at the police contract. I'm not, off the top of my head, I can't recall.
All right. Now, I did promise the commission last meeting that I was going to meet with Mr. Meese about the contract and some of the wording. And I think we went through it. I think some of it was a matter of just some clarification on my part. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
And some of it, actually we discovered, or you discovered a couple paragraphs that might have been outdated, that were something that rolled over from maybe a previous contract. So I think cleaned it up a little bit and helped clarify some of the issues for me. Now, one of the things, since there's probably, we'll see 2 or 3 more contracts before I leave this position here in about 3 years. So you're only going to have to hear this a couple more times, and then you'll be done with it. But I think I've always expressed to the commission, to the community, that my objection to this particular system in a governmental body, mainly because government already is a monopoly. I mean, I have no problem with that. you're not going to go to some other monopoly and see anything different. But to have union authority by state law within the monopoly, it's like having a monopoly within a monopoly. I personally object to that. I can say that all day long. I'm just spouting hot air because it doesn't going to make any difference at this level. It would have to be changed at a federal or state level. But I just want to state that because I object to it because it's a monopoly. I don't think public workers should have a monopoly within a monopoly. Having said that, I think that we also have a problem. This system of employment also presents problematic areas for our management administration, especially in the regards to firing personnel. Creates tremendous problems. I object to that too, because it's very costly to the city, very costly to the taxpayer to fire someone in this type of system. I think it's a burden on the taxpayer, and it's a burden on the administration, and it's a burden on management. Having said that, I know that whatever I say is not going to change it. But I'd like to state that for the record because I think that as representatives of the taxpayers, we need to be aware of it. We need to understand it, and we need to at least voice our opinions of it. And I think before I got into this arena with serving as a public official in the city of Livingston, I had no idea what the effect it had on the city, the costs to the city, and the costs to the taxpayer. I'd like you to take that home and think about it, because I think the union system was a very good system in the early part of last century. I think the system in this century, the pendulum has swung to be a little more on the abusive side from the union side, whereas before employment was a little more abusive. I think that we need to be aware of this. I think that labor laws in our country nowadays are so good that I think you rarely see employee abuse. You would never see it in a governmental system anymore. So I object to it in the sense that it creates a burden for management, creates a burden on the taxpayer, and is a very costly system to the taxpayer. So I want you to think about that, because most people aren't aware of it, and aware that to some degree, a certain percentage, I don't have a percentage for you, reason why you get raised taxes and rates. I have no objection to people here in the city. I think we have great employees. I think the people are really good. And I always have to make this distinction. I am not criticizing people. I'm criticizing a system that I think is unjust to the taxpayer. So having said that, you'll only have to hear that a couple more times before I leave office. But so just bear with me. It only took me about 4, maybe 5 minutes to say that. So if you don't want to hear that, when we have a contract, just come in after that. Anyway, is there any public comment on this resolution for 4532? Public comment? Hearing none, let's have roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Motion passes. Resolution number 4534. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with Livingston Healthcare regarding the deferred construction of multipurpose path along the access road. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair, as the city commission is aware, Livingston Healthcare is in the middle of a large, expensive project to build a new healthcare facility within our community. That project has taken them to a new area of our community and expanding the level of healthcare that they'll be able to provide. Along the way in that project, they have encountered significant difficulties along the way in terms of some of the cost with their project. And at this point, they are looking to wrap that project up in such a way as to be able to leave some funds available for equipment purchases. One of the items that would be required of Livingston Healthcare in their new facility would be to construct a multi-purpose path, basically from the front door or front area of the hospital down their new access road, and then that path would dead end at US 89, because currently there is nothing else to connect that path to. This is not to be confused with the new piece of trail that Livingston Healthcare is already committed to install, which will extend over and connect over to the Myers River View Trail system. So this is basically just a paved walk, if you will, from the front area of the hospital out to US 89. And at this point, that walk would dead end. Construction of that walk has been estimated between the mid 50s up to the mid 70s, depending upon who's provided the estimates. And so given those numbers and the project as it is at the moment, Livingston Healthcare is requesting that the city of Livingston allow them to defer the construction of that project. So to be very clear about what that means, as Mr. Lowe expressed in his letter, the hospital recognizes that this is their responsibility to construct this infrastructure. They are simply asking to construct it at a later date. I think primarily when it has something to connect to. They recognize that by this deferral, they're not relieving themselves of the responsibility, simply postponing it. The administration has met with Mr. Lowe and his team several times over the last couple of months to coordinate some of the project costs and inspections and different things. And we certainly approve and support this particular action on behalf of Livingston Healthcare. We think it's responsible, and we always, as the letter states, the city has the option at its discretion to require the path to be built when we deem it's most necessary. So we're very comfortable with recommending this for approval. Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions.
Okay. All right. We have a resolution before us. Do you want to start with a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 4534.
Okay, motion by Reddington,
I'll second.
second by Hoagland. Commission discussion? Commissioner Friedman, Commissioner Stern?
It's all good.
Okay. Commissioner Reddington? Commissioner Hoagland?
Quick question. How, if someone was walking to the hospital, would they access? On the road or?
Come on up, Ren.
We are committed, and it's in the plans to connect to the city trail system. So they would connect through that. So there is a path being built to Myers Lane to the back side of the facility. And so they would access through that trail.
They could still get to the hospital safely by following that trail. Okay, thank you. That's all.
I don't have any questions. Is there any public comment on resolution 4534? Any public comment? Brent? Yes.
I just wanted to, again, thank the city for their support of this essential project. And of course, we're getting more excited as the days get closer. It's still on schedule for October of this year. And so, of course, we want to see you all at the open house, but we're getting very excited the closer we get.
Well, we're very excited about coming to visit. Not to necessarily stay for any length of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? All right. So we do have a motion and a second before us. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes,
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Motion passes. Resolution number 4536, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing city manager to sign a professional contract agreement with Moon Over Montana Sound and Lighting for the 2015 Summerfest event. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, I believe the city commission received a replacement document this evening. Moon Over Montana is the vendor that the city has used for several years to provide the audio mixing, stereo, big quadraphonic speakers setup that makes Summerfest so loud and audible. And they do a great job for us. And this is a routine contract that we bring to you every year. Certainly taking questions.
All right, thank you very much. May we start with a motion?
I make a motion, we approve resolution 4536.
Motion by Reddington, second by Stern. Commission discussion questions. Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Reddington, Commissioner Hoagland. Good. Mr. Bennett. Okay. The items that were struck through here on this document you provided. Consultant, so no, they aren't going to handle all correspondence, booking, scheduling, coordinating contracts in regards with bands. Is that something we will do?
Well, Mr. Chair, so the contract, we have a boilerplate contract that we use for all of our Summerfest vendors. And what happened is some of the language from the one that we did last time with Ms. Gardner got left into this contract with
Okay.
Moon Over Montana.
All right.
So that's why we gave you a replacement one tonight. We don't expect Ms. Gardner to do all the booking and the correspondence.
Got it.
These folks will be mixing the music.
Okay, so we do have a contractor.
We do.
All right. Sounds good. All right, is there any public comment on resolution 4536? Public comment on resolution 4536. All right, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman.
4,
Motion passes. Next resolution is resolution 4535, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, to exclude land from the City of Livingston by petition of Cotter Bain, certain land which is contiguous to the City of Livingston and described as blocks 11, 12, 13, 15, and lots 1 through 7 of block 14 of the Montague subdivision. Mr. Meese.
Chair, we actually have a slight procedural change with this evening, and I'm going to let Ms. Llewellyn explain that to you.
Okay.
When this initially came before the commission, there was a notice requirement, not a public hearing requirement for this exclusion. That notice went into the paper with an incorrect date on it. It had to be re-noticed, and the 20 days that elapse will not run until your next meeting.
Oh,
So I would
okay.
ask that you just set this aside until your next meeting and deal with it for that, at that time.
All right. So we will table this issue till next meeting, and we'll move on to the next. Thank you very much. All right. We are done with resolutions. We're going to move to our action items. Action item A, discuss, approve, deny changes to the annexation policy requiring the disclosure of any known development use for the property development/use for the property for which annexation is being requested by petition. This was requested by Commissioner Hoagland. Do you have anything to start off with?
Mr. Chair, simply that this was an action item requested, I believe, at the last meeting. And the staff did make some efforts to contact different communities around the state. We haven't been able to communicate with all of those that we've attempting, but those attempts continue. And we provided a very brief memo of our findings to this point. So to this point, we've spoken with Helena, Billings, Bozeman, and Missoula. None of those communities actually require a, excuse me, Mr. Chair, pre-annexation disclosure. Several of them actually run their annexation request and their zoning request parallel. So when the annexation request comes in, they also get a zoning application from the property owner, where the property owner is saying, I would like it to be highway, commercial, or residential one, or whatever. And then they'll run those processes parallel. We've talked about that, about how you can combine hearings and those types of things. But even in those processes, Mr. Woodhull and I weren't able to find anybody that requires disclosure of the property, potential use, sale, or development. Now, in some cases, they knew, obviously, because those folks made it known, but there was not a requirement, so to speak. Let me review my notes here, Mr. Chair. Billings, yeah, right. So Billings is a little bit different. Their county has much more extensive zoning. In fact, they have a unified city-county zoning ordinance. So even if something is in the county and it becomes annexed into the city, because they have one zoning ordinance for the city and the county, it makes it much easier for it to flow between the two. And there is some of that with the city of Missoula as well. They do have some areas of Missoula County that are zoned contiguous to the city, and so they do the same thing. If an area outside the city of Missoula that has county zoning applies for annexation, they try and bring it in at the city zoning designation, with the closest similarities to what it was. But to this point, we've not found communities, and we will continue to work. We've not found a community that requires disclosure prior to the annexation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for that research. Commission discussion. Commissioner Friedman.
I've given some thought to this. If I understand the process right now, and it's gotten a little off track, I think the last one we had with John Tecca, he's got 10 acres. He wants to annex it to the city. He did all the paperwork, and we approved it. And I think that's the first step. Disclosure to me is kind of a dangerous track. When I start to look at it, I've seen a little bit of overembossment where they get caught up in that. And the reason we have this process is that we have, once it's annexed into the city, it's got to follow our codes. That's our protection there. And I like that process. Disclosure to me, when I heard that, I say, whoa. Many times the property owner doesn't know. He hasn't worked with a developer. Developer hasn't got a tenant. But that simple first process, it's a very simple process. And if it's part of our growth policy and we do have the code, end of discussion on that. Later on, when you get into other things, you might have a different discussion. And also, there's a competitive nature to a lot of things too. It's not up to the side that we got 3 of something and we don't want 1 more of something. That's not our thing. So to keep it clean, I like the first process. Property owner comes to us and wants to annex. We look at that. We approve that. It's within our code, and we go from there. The disclosure part, as you see, many of the cities and towns around us don't have that. And I think it's kind of a dangerous area to get into right off the bat. I got to know what's going on. Well, no, you don't. So that's where I come from. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other commissioners want to make any comments or discuss this? Commissioner Stern, no? Okay, Commissioner Reddington or Holborn?
I agree with Mel. I think if someone meets the criteria, that's definitely where we want to start out with. And again, I know I've used this term before, but it's a slippery slope. You know, if we start having people disclose what they're going to do, that could, you said it could be very competitive, and I think involve us in something that we don't really necessarily need to be involved in. So if they make the criteria as far as the annexation, we follow that process and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hoagland, would you like to?
When I think the initial reason for us discussing this was the conflicts and problems that we had. It wasn't to change the process or to say the process is the best or the worst, but I think revisiting the process, making sure that we have the best process possible won't hurt us. And I continue to support that because I'm not sure if our process is the best. That's why we're doing the research. So I continue to promote us revisiting the concept and making sure we're doing the right thing, because I think it will only be to the advantage of the city and business and the community. So it's like finding a place where it works for everyone. So I think we should continue making sure that we're doing the best thing for our towns.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this issue of annexation policy? If you have public comment, please come on up, state your name and address for the record, and fire away.
Warren, maybe 310 South H Street. I think that, first of all, I would respectfully disagree with the city manager. I've seen the paperwork for either Billings or Bozeman, and the annexation request does require the purpose of the annexation. I agree with Mr. Friedman that you shouldn't be able to pick and choose what businesses come in as a business. What we have just seen has been an absolute model of how things shouldn't work. And what I mean by that is, if it was annexed, you saw how everything else went down the tubes after that. All the ordinances, all the controls, every one of them was going to be bypassed. So until it's impossible to vote against an ordinance so that it can be bypassed, i.e. the sign, or until they can't move it 5 feet over the line, I think it's more than legitimate to know what's going in. I don't think you should be able to pick and choose what business goes in. No, I agree 100%. But if you don't have the power to shut it off after that, in other words, it can't be a laundry list process where, well, we annexed it, so whatever comes in is fair game. This last situation could have been better for proving how that doesn't work. So I think that especially for the entrances to the city, more so than any place else, I think that the ordinances and controls that have to be put on that, fine, annex it. That's not a problem. But after that, if it goes downhill, it's a huge problem, because once you get it, it's there forever. So in terms of determining a process, I think that the tightening up area doesn't have to be the annexing. The tightening up area has to be the controls after that point. And there should be no, I do not know city legalities. There should be no way that you can take and do a variance on a major ordinance. No way at all. So basically, I'm in agreement, and I'm also saying that I think that what we just experienced was a perfect example of how not to do it. So, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Warren.
Any other public comment on action item A? Further public comment? Okay. Commissioner Stern.
I have a few comments. Warren, I agree strongly with what Warren said. Well stated, Warren. I mean, the annexation in the case of the truck stop was the first stake in the ground. And it's true, I mean, so the billings form, here's a copy of the billings form, we passed it out, but here, they require a couple of things. They require a map of both boundaries, the zoning of the property requesting annexation, and the property immediately adjacent to it. So they, in the petition application, is a place where you at least have to say what you want it zoned. It says you gotta submit it to all these various departments, including city, county planning, and I think we should change, or we should add that to it, you know, when you submit the petition, it goes to the county planning department as well. And then they do have a form here where it says the use of property and it's filled out. And I think this is a pretty good way to go. Here's the billing one. And they should state the use of the development, and it should be stated that the petition may be rejected if this isn't filled out. May be rejected, doesn't have to be. The Watson annexation is a great point in case where they wanted to give some to the city and wanted it to be a park. They wanted to do a development. They didn't know exactly what it was. That was a clear partnership, and so I think it would have been easy and straightforward for the commission to provide an exception to that. But I think requiring the stated development is a good idea. In the case of the public commons, you get the government involved to do this, to help facilitate a business deal. When you're using the public tax money and the public administration to help facilitate a business, the public has a right to know what's going to go there. Maybe not to choose, but they have a right to know. And the commission could not reject a petition based on the use. If the use is consistent with the zoning land use table, it can go in. The point of writing it down is for disclosure, because you're using the government administration to help businesses, a particular business, and thereby potentially providing a competitive advantage. And so when you're using the public domain and the public commons and the public tax money, I think the public has a right to know what's going to go there. And that's also necessary in a place, especially necessary in a place like Livingston, where we really have to protect the character of this special little town. So that's how I feel on it. And I'd like to see the form amended to look more like that billing example, with the additional, information provided. Thank you.
I too have given this some thought on this issue. And really to me, we can tinker with the process to a certain degree and, fine tune it, which, possibly we can do a little bit of that in the steps proceeding or after the annexation. But I think what I was hearing, or sometimes maybe hearing from the community, was that what we were looking for was control. And the only way we're going to control the beauty or the character of Livingston at its entrances, wherever that interest may be, is by ownership. So the only way that you can control those entrances is really to own the property. Ultimately, for the city to go out and buy all the property up, or maybe a private-public partnership buying the property up. And then at that point, you can determine what you want there. You can determine what it looks like. You can determine what type of businesses you're going to go out and seek. And you then don't have to worry about what people are going to do there or what it's going to look like, because you're going to determine that. Ultimately, that's your best scenario if you have the money and you have the people who can go out and find the businesses to get there. That's a very expensive proposition as well. But if you're looking for control and looking for the control of what the city looks like, retaining the character, retaining a certain type of environment that we have here. I think that's the only way you're really gonna achieve that goal, because you're always gonna have, you know, at a spot like the Seavers property at the East End Exchange, it's not very attractive for many types of businesses. I mean, it's a rocky outcropping. But if you want to control that character and control the look, you got to control the property. So that's an idea or a way to go as well. That's a very expensive proposition for the city, and it's a very difficult position for the city to be in unless there's some type of structure already set up or established previously before you go out and start doing something like that. I don't even know if any cities do that. I know there are cities that have very stringent ordinances about what buildings look like and that type of thing. I mean, we can certainly get into very stringent ordinances and really tighten up our ordinances, but beyond that, then the next step would be control property. So those are my thoughts. So I think that, is there any other public comment on this? On this regard, any other commission comment? Commissioner
You got
Freeman?
to take your last thought. Government should not be in business. You just went through that with the union. I look at Bozeman in a couple of instances, Story Mansion. I saw the Story Mansion after the fraternity moved out of it. It was a wreck. And parts of the community took on that building. It was unbelievable. And they still have it, and they've spent millions on it, and they've lost the tax roll on it, and it's a mess and a half. They looked at a very historic area, so they have a law firm that comes along and says, you know, I think we'd like to take over the building, and we'll fix it up, and you can have certain use of it, and they even rejected that. And the dollar was going to be on the law firm to fix the building up. I don't want the government to be in any business, anywhere near it. Also, I think the Manville property, and I think I talked to Courtney about this, was a large piece of land, and the city again wanted to take control of that because they probably knew there was a developer that was going to get involved in it, and they didn't particularly like the developer, and they had a lawsuit against them, and it cost them millions of dollars. So this is why I say that first process is so important. And even the Seaver property, Mr. Seaver wanted to come and say, I wanted to annex it to the city. And I said that the night they were talking about it with the truck stop. Actually, we should have annexed into the city. The next step was what was going to happen, and if that building codes are not met, then you get another issue. But the very first step, if I own something, I want to get rid of it. And I want to give it to the city, and this is it. Some instances you don't know what's going to be in there, other instances you do. But I think that first step, we have to keep it real clean and not make it messy. After that, that's where the controls come in. And if we have a growth policy, and if we have the code, that's where we want to be sharp. So that's why I say you got a lot of potential lawsuits here if you don't start off on the right foot. And that's my point. So I think this is great that we're putting all this together. And of course, the cleanest way is to have a city-county government and zoning. That solves a lot of problems. But we have to do what we have to do the way we're set up. So I like that first process to be very clean. After that, that's where we really got to pay attention to things. So that's the way I look at it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Does the commission want to direct the administration to do anything at this point? And what is that?
Yeah, go ahead. I think these reports that we got are excellent, and the more of this we can get and put a plan together, we're really zeroing in on the right way for us to go.
What report are you talking about now? Which report are you talking about?
All the stuff that we got tonight from the buildings,
Uh-huh.
taking,
Oh, okay.
taking a cross-section of what's actually happening and see how it's working for other cities and go from there.
I agree in that like I said earlier, that I want to make sure we have the best process. And I'm not sure if we do, but I think through research and work towards figuring out what's best for our community, then we will get there and have then something that's, here it is, it works. It will, move us forward with businesses, with community, and what's best for us. So I'd like to continue that process and the work towards finding the best document or solution to this.
Mr. Stern?
It doesn't sound like we quite have a consensus to make a change right now. That's why we continue the conversation.
What are you asking?
Which change are you specifically, are you asking about the form of the billings form? Is that,
If we, so any policy decisions or changes we make will ultimately go up in the petition for annexation. Right? I mean, the changes will be codified with law behind it. But ultimately, that form, after it's going to be disclosure or not disclosure or what have you. So to make some changes require a majority vote at the city commission, and it doesn't look like that majority would get that now. That would be my comment.
well, you never know until you make a motion.
And so, I mean, if we wanted to have a continued conversation, I would file on these draft, what I think would be a good version, and bring that to the commission. And the community. So I'd be interested in continuing the conversation.
All right. Sounds good. I have one question. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the consensus of the commission is, first, they want to avoid buying property. And second of all, let's revisit and look at the process after annexation and work with the ordinances and the planning boards that we already have established in order to refine that process. Is that what I'm hearing, or am I missing something?
Well, I think it's two parts.
Mhm.
That's part of the process, the after annexation process. But we want to make sure our annexation process and the requests and request forms are what's best. And
Okay, so
and
request
it's-
forms, okay,
James, do I read you right in, that perhaps you're suggesting we direct the planning board to provide us with an initial recommendation?
yes, that'd be one. I think the other part would be what Commissioner Hoagland just said. If we're unsure, unhappy with the present application process for annexation, then we need to refine that. So I would suggest that right now you've proposed us taking a look at the billings form.
I'd like to change that, and let's, let the commission ask the planning board to review and update if necessary. To provide review and if necessary, provide recommendation to update the annexation process.
Okay,
And then at that point, that would come from the planning board, the folks who think about that stuff all the time, and that could come up to the commission, and the commission at that point could choose, accept, reject, modify.
okay. And the planning board, who's the city representative on the planning board?
Planning director.
Okay, good. So we have a city representation, we have 2 commissioners, and then we have 3 or 4 volunteers, citizens. Okay. I see heads shaking. Does that sound like an appropriate direction? Everyone's, okay? Okay, so the commission is then directing the planning board to study and provide suggestions on refining the annexation policy and forms and procedures. Process. Does that sound good? Okay. And send it to committee for study. Boy, it sounds really important. All right. Is everyone, so who will relay that to the planning board?
Jim,
Mr. Meese.
I wonder if, Chair, I wonder if we could get that in the form of a motion,
Okay,
and then we could simply, staff could relay that by simple memorandum to the next city commission. That's the plan.
okay. I have no objection to that. Sounds good.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern.
I move, we as a commission direct the planning board to please review and if necessary, provide recommendations to update the annexation process.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Are you able to, you got it recorded, so you don't have to write it down verbatim. So is there any discussion in that regard? Any public comment? In regard?
No, I
Yes.
gotta just say that I like this particular process. It allows everybody to think about it. Allows the community to make sure we get the input from all the different everybody that need to provide input to this. And through this sort of process, we'll really come up with a good solution. Thanks, everybody. I think the process is really
Okay,
coming up with significant policy changes, especially at this moment.
okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes,
Commissioner Holton,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Friedman,
Or
motion passes. Action item B, discuss drug enforcement / reduction efforts within the community. Mr. Meese.
Chair, I'm going to ask Chief Johnson to join us at the table up front here. And Chief, would you perhaps give us a brief summary of our current drug enforcement efforts, sparing any operational details, if possible?
Currently, we don't have a DARE program anymore as far as the schools are concerned. That faded out several years back. The biggest thing that we have right now is we are in cooperation with the Missouri River Drug Task Force, and we work with the county. They have a deputy who's assigned to that task force, and it's a multi-jurisdictional task force, so we work with them. And that's the biggest thing that we have going on right now as far as drug actions. As far as trying to educate and minimize it, we do have the school resource officer. He is actively participating in classrooms when requested in the middle school and the high school, trying to educate along those lines. That's about all I have for that.
Chief, we use the canine?
Yeah, we do have a canine, a drug sniffing dog. And actually, Park County, with the Highway Patrol, we have 4 of them in this county. The city has one, Park County has one, and then Highway Patrol have 2 of them stationed in Park County.
And that's been a pretty effective tool,
Yes, it has. Yeah.
especially about
Bobby is very good at what he does.
Appreciate Bobby.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Say, in addition to that, we cooperate with the DUI task force.
Yeah, the Southwest Chemical Dependency Program, they have a DUI task force, and we have worked closely with them on different avenues. Most recently, it was a multi-year study of all the DUIs and enforcement action that we've taken.
Ask the chief some questions. Chief, so what do you feel would enhance our programs? What do you feel like we could do in Livingston to reduce drug access in Livingston? Or is that too broad of a question?
It's not. Ultimately, I think that the best option, what I would like to see, probably long-term goal, is for the city to have a dedicated Missouri River Drug Task Force officer in itself. Instead of, we have one that's a deputy right now, and he's fairly overwhelmed with the work, even though it's a multi-jurisdictional thing. He's the only one here in Park County, and he's the only one that works here in Park County, unless some of the other agencies can free up personnel also. So it would be nice if we had somebody to work in conjunction with that deputy. We used to have a detective that was very, very good at drug work. Unfortunately, he moved on to bigger and better things. So yeah, ultimately that would be the best thing, in my opinion, was we have a dedicated officer to the drug task force. And I think continuing with the school resource officer program, keeping getting the education at the younger ages, and that would be a good thing too.
You find that, we have a small community. It's a small rural county. It's large in size. Do you find, I'm probably answering my question, but do you find that criminals are very good at eluding law enforcement in regards to
That's a tough one.
transport and the sale and the distribution of drugs?
Being that we're on the interstate, there are a large number of stuff that comes through the interstate, typically heading from the West Coast east. But as far as in our community, we have a fairly good idea of who the players are, and it's a matter of like the drug task force building enough on them to get a case going, type of thing. And I think in the last 5 quarters, the Missouri River Drug Task Force, there were 16 felony cases that developed in the city limits that either we referred to them or they came across independently. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, 16, but if the Missouri River Drug Task Force is typically, they work them up to be bigger cases, and some of them have gone federal also.
So a dedicated officer, would that be a new FTE for us? Would we need to hire a new FTE on something like that, Mr. Meese, too?
Sure, I would imagine.
Okay.
Given existing coverages that we have at the moment, we would definitely dedicate them to the testing.
Would any of the commission, a couple more questions, and would any of the commission object if we directed the city manager to at least get us a cost for that? Okay, all right. That would be my vote, or request. All right. In your estimation with our community, what is, I don't even know how to rightly word this. What is the largest concern of law enforcement regarding this issue? Where would that reside? Or what, not necessarily in a residence, but what kind of problem do you see as the biggest contributing factor to this in the city of Livingston County of Park?
The contributing factor, I think that's a society/cultural thing right now. The biggest thing, talking to the deputy part of the drug task force, is prescription drugs. That's on the rise. Some of the other illicit drugs, methamphetamine is coming back a little bit. They have seen an increase in things like cocaine in the area, but by far it's prescription drug abuse.
where do people, what's your experience with where do people mostly get that kind of stuff? Home medicine cabinet?
Yeah, if we knew that, we'd probably be able to get them a little easier.
Well, I've hogged the microphone for a while. Anyone else would like to make, yes, Commissioner
Yeah,
Friedman.
Mr. Chair, I heard that they were thinking of random drug testing in the school.
I did hear that for the student athletes and student participations, yes.
Do you feel that's good or bad? Or is that a-
My personal opinion, I think that's probably a good idea. I think it helps, bring that level of I guess, confidence in the student body.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner?
I have a few comments.
Commissioner Stern?
So to talk about, let's say to fund something like, right? I mean, we're all into making our community safe and clean and all that. Not all that kind of stuff. I mean, everything that encompasses. We're all into that. We all have kids and we raise them, and we all have neighbors with kids. We all have neighbors. We want safe communities. If we're going to address substance abuse, and we're willing to say, think about incorporating a certain amount of money into the budget to address that. I think it's more of a complex situation than just asking for a quick write-up of how much an FTE would cost. And after we kind of figure out what it is we want, then we should ask for it at the beginning of the CIP meetings, well in advance so that the administration could put it as one of those unlisted items in the CIP or as a listed item. So I think to work through the CIP is the best way to incorporate that. And then what is it that we're actually asking? So you mentioned the education in schools, but then there's enforcement through the Missouri River Task Force. My interaction with this sort of thing has been through the Youth Justice Council in Helena, which deals with youth in the criminal justice system, and their drug use and mental health issues exist as co-occurring disorders, and if you don't address one, they go to the other, and then if you address this one, they go to this one, and they reinforce each other. So in a lot of these situations, especially with children, you have to address both substance abuse at the same time that you do mental health disorders. So it costs a little bit more, and you have to make sure you have the programs to do both, or neither program will work. I'm not saying that's true across the board, but that's true in many of these cases. And I'm not saying that these are the only factors or whatever. What I think we want to do, if this is the way you'd like to proceed, I certainly would support it. I mean, if this is a goal to which you would like to achieve, I would support it. And my recommendation would be to say, ask the administration and the law enforcement arm to come up with some sort of plan. Given, let's say we were to allocate funds roughly equivalent to one FTE to make our community safer and cleaner relative to substance abuse. Then what would you guys come up with? And allow our administration some time to think about it, and would they take a multi-track way, maybe they would have two part-time FTEs doing different things, I don't know, whatever you guys are the content experts, you come up with a solution. That's the way I'd like to approach it.
Okay.
But I'm open to further discussion.
Yeah, well,
I do.
okay. Any other commission thoughts or comments? Okay. Not yet? Okay. Is there any community, any public comment on this? No? Public comment? Open up, no hands raising? Okay. Yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm opening this up for the thought of, is this something we value as a commission, not just me? Do we value this as a commission? Is this something that we want to take a look at? And is this something that falls within the purview of our responsibilities as commissioners? I think it does, but, I'm bringing it up and trying to get some sense from our law enforcement of where we stand in that issue. When the law enforcement, their first suggestion is we need to hire someone to work in the Missouri River Task Force. that's something to consider. But I agree with you. We can hand it over to the commission, to the administration and law enforcement and say, take a look at this. What would you do? What's your suggestions about enhancing enforcement and reducing use?
So, to beat it, that part, long story longer. I mean, is the principal objective to specifically dedicate it to substance abuse and its reduction? Or is it law enforcement issues in general, in that we could ask, what's your biggest need? And then they could come back with, 1, 2, or 3 needs, and maybe drug abuse, substance abuse is number 1, or maybe it's number 2 or 3. You want to open it like that, or are you thinking specifically?
I think ultimately I would like to see less access for our youth in our community. I think the access is huge. And, obviously education's part of that. Family environment, school environment, our societal environment, all those things play a factor. And, but as far as the law enforcement factor, that factor is we have laws and we enforce them. If something's illegal, we enforce it and, prosecute those who are illegally participating in those activities. But I think it's a multi-pronged thing. Of course, you can't just do one thing and ignore the rest of the factors that contribute to abuse or use. So, yeah, go ahead.
One last question then for Brad and Dale. Do you guys think substance abuse is a critical enough issue of a magnitude that warrants investigation on how to improve efforts? So, I mean, these are the most important things that we need to do in law enforcement right now. Is, substance abuse, one of those.
It's something that the administration's been concerned about for years. The city manager's task force on substance abuse about 4 years ago, and they came back with some good suggestions that we tried to put in place. But certainly, if that's something the city commission has a priority on it, then we will welcome the opportunity to provide some more specific recommendations in that arena. One of the things that we did with that particular city manager's task force was we did involve members of the pharmaceutical industry in town. We had physicians on that particular organization. And so I think there is a benefit to getting a wide cross section on this particular issue, more than just enforcement. But that is obviously the thing that we do biggest and best as a city government. There are other partners in the community that we work with and we would continue to work with, and we certainly could enhance those relationships as well.
Yeah, so we can certainly do that. That's something the city commission is interested in. We can bring it back. That won't happen in 2 weeks.
No.
But I think we can look at it.
Yeah.
Take 8 months.
Keep it on the radar.
I'd like to hear an answer to your question. I think that's an important question. What does law enforcement and the administration see? Does you see that this is an issue that deserves stronger attention, or do you think it is something that is well managed?
I would say it is a high importance thing. Number one, I don't know, but it's definitely the top 5. Absolutely. It's something that needs to be addressed and looked into. And if we can come up with creative solutions, that's great. But, I'm open to whatever we can do.
Yes, sir.
So, again, and I apologize if I wasn't clear. Yes, I think this is an important issue, mainly because it affects so many different areas of our community. I think in the 23 plus years as I've been a city manager, one of the unfortunate things that I see that has happened on this issue over and over again is there seems to be a focus that it is a youth issue, that demand and distribution is all generated by the youth inside a community. My experience with that has been different. My experience is that youth usage and distribution really is just a reflection of adult usage and distribution within a community. That's where the substances come from. That's where they flow from predominantly. And so that was one of the things that we talked about with the task force is you can't look at this as just a youth issue. They are simply a reflection of the adults within the community. And so I would just stress that as we get started, that there seems to be this, well, it's all the kids. It's really not. Proportionally, it's the adults who are setting the models and the examples and making things available and putting that down. The thing that concerns me so much about this issue is it puts the younger generation cross demographics. It puts them at risk at a much earlier age now than even it did 10, 15 years ago. The studies that we do in the schools now indicate that most, I think that over a majority of students have their first drug use or experimentation by the end of the 8th grade. That's that bar has dropped significantly just over the last 10 to 15 years. So it's not just an issue of frequency, it's an issue of younger and younger folks being affected. And that's when Chief Johnson was talking about education. Whether it's a DARE program or some other type of science-based program, that's why those things are so important. We can't start it young enough. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I would personally like to see the administration come back with a recommendation to the commission for consideration regarding how at least the city can integrate with other agencies within the city and the state to enhance the program here within Livingston Park County and see where that leads us, where that takes us, if that's vague and specific enough for you.
It is, Mr. Chair, and I think we can certainly take that and work with it and come back in a reasonable period of time with at least some good updates and continue to move that issue to the commission.
Is there any disagreement within the commission? Does that sound fair? And I agree with you. You know, it should be something we do handle through the CIP. And if this doesn't happen until next year's CIP, you know, as far as implementing. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Right. And there's
But if
no,
there's, if we've all established that this is a priority, budgets are nothing more than priorities. So the question just becomes, where does it place as a priority in the budget and or the CIP? So,
Right. I think once we,
commission identifies a priority and something, a set of methods they want to use to attack that priority, then other things give. That's what a budget is about.
and I don't think we should set you on a tight timeline for this. I agree with that. Do what you need in order to do what's necessary in order to do a good job in figuring out what is the best way to move forward on that. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, community input? All right, let's move on to the next subject. Discussion item C, pros and cons of railroad overpass project. Mr. Meese, you want to
Sure.
start that out?
Well, there was a request to add this item back to the agenda for this evening. The city commission received a package from Mr. Denton, Mr. Coons, and Mr. Smith on well, you received it. It's dated tonight, but you received it last week, and it was included in the city commission packet as well as a drawing. Then there was some additional information that was requested by the city commission with regard to financing. And so I supplied a copy of the resolution for the local special mill levy, as well as 2 documents that outline the funding that we received from the federal government, and a package from Dowell HKM, and I know Mr. Odegaard is here from Dow this evening as well. So item has been placed back on the agenda, and I suppose we're ready to discuss.
Okay. So has the commission had sufficient time to read the materials that we've been supplied, and how would you like to proceed? Do you want to ask questions? You want to hear from Mr. Denton or Mr.
An extremely quick question of
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah,
What is the, please tell me the Omnibus Appropriations Act 2009?
That would have been the first federal appropriation that the city received with regard to the underpass. Let's see, 2009, right. I believe it was in the amount of 300 something, yeah.
I know in the one 2010 as well.
332,500. That was our first appropriation. And for the undercrossing. And then there was a second one in 2010 for like 550 something.
So we received about $800,000 in federal funding.
That's correct. I think it's, let's see. 8. Yeah, a little bit over 9.
And then we levied a couple $100,000 as a community.
We levied 650,000.
And that's the sum total of the funds that what the project.
Correct. Correct. Yes. That's the sum total of funds that have been, of which some portions have been spent. Correct.
That's what was true for funding.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you.
some allocated and some of that allocation already spent. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So it is my understanding that Mr. Dent and Mr. Kuntz met with various commissioners and discussed the idea with them. Thus getting back here on the agenda, and it is my understanding that we have a letter from Dowell addressing some of the issues here. So is there anyone who from the public would like to address the commission first before we get into discussion? You're public, yes. Anyone out there sitting and looking at us is public, except for the administration.
Well, I'm Steve Cruz, from the Board of Veterans Board. First, I'd like to thank you. I see you put us on the agenda, and we are ahead of dog issues.
Yes, we saved the best for last.
Yes. And, the agenda item is the pros and cons of the overpass. And what we'd encourage you to do is to resume the study that you started with Staley. And in your packet, there's a letter, the HKM response to the one that I gave you a couple meetings ago. And I don't anticipate getting into a detailed response to that. I plan to do that in writing, make sure that each one of you get that. But this evening, unless there's something specific, if you want to take a minute and look at it, and if there's something specific you would like to have me address, I'd be willing to do so. There are a couple items that I'm going to pull up for the benefit of this discussion. And one item is, excuse me, I'll give you a chance to respond to my. Shall I proceed?
No, if someone didn't jump in, just go ahead.
Okay. On page 70-E, there's the subject of the levy is is shown. And I made the comment relative to that. And to that, I'd like to add that the levy, as I remember it, did win a 2-to-1 support. And of the 900 votes cast, I voted with the levy to support the underpass. At that time, the underpass was projected as a solution to the problem. And I, along with others, voted for the solution to the problem. But that's not what I'm concerned about right now, because also, as I recall it, this underpass was going to be further west out toward the truck stop, where the underpass actually made sense. And also that in getting people to possibly support paying for part of this, it's important to have a project that they like. And the enterprise poll, and also we have a petition with 154 signatures on it that suggests that the overpass is more popular. And also on item F, I discussed the voice issue and the eminent domain and that kind of thing. And when you combine that with item C on page 74, the cost analysis put together by HKM, anyway, their response to the voice thing and the cost analysis, one thing falls out of that, and that is that HKM has never seriously considered the Denton overpass. Now that on that page 74 there, they come up with a $20 million overpass. We have no idea what overpass they're looking at, but it certainly isn't the Denton one, because had they looked at the Denton one, they would realize that there are no right-of-way issues and there's no 3 million plus retainer wall issues and things like that. And so, and also the one thing that fell out of the Staley study was that there were no glaring errors in the Denton proposal. And it is clear to us that the overpass has never been fairly considered. For if it was, we would know that there's no drainage issues with the overpass like there's the underpass. Sunrise Drive stays open and actually improved, made much more usable. Safety issues, visibility, ease of use, no right-of-way things, maintenance. And we can't find, we've been at this, I've personally been at this nearly a year now. I've been looking for something that the underpass is superior to the overpass. I can't find anything. And with that in mind, I respectfully ask that you proceed with the Staley to complete the study, because the stuff that they didn't look at is probably the most advantageous to the overpass. And if I understand the numbers correctly, it'll take about close to 7,000 to complete that study. And when you look at the long-term aspects of it, the total cost of the project, we're looking at an item that's way less than 0.1% of the total project. And from my point of view, it's just prudent to dive into this thing one step further to find out exactly where we're at. And a lot of the work has been put on the underpass so far. We recognize that. And but the information that we gathered came right straight from HKM and their drawings. And these are the concerns that we have. And I'm certain that, of course, this is impossible to do, but if the public would have been aware of the Fleshman Creek stuff and all that, it's unlikely we'd be with an underpass at this point. It would be an overpass. And That's a brief summary. If there's any questions or comments that any of you folks have, why, fire away.
Is there any comments from the commission? Any? Yeah, we will. Of course. I'd like, while they're here right now, I'd like to give them an opportunity to ask any questions if anyone has any. No questions? Okay, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Meese.
So, Mr. Chair, just with what Mr. Kuntz was saying, I want to remind the commission and those in the audience, what Staley has done to this point. Staley has nothing to work with. They don't have a set of prints. In order to do what they've been able to do for us to this point, they had to create a conceptual set of prints. Doing that as they go along, using industry averages and using what they know to be accepted slopes and right-of-ways and all of the types of things that they would have to do it if they design this type of an overpass structure to begin to meet qualifications for the MDT. So what they've done is create a conceptual set of plans, not a real set of plans, not a set of plans that we could take out and build anything from, like what we have done with Dow HKM for the past year and a half, working with MDT, a conceptual set of plans. And they reached the amount of money that we had agreed to spend. And with their conceptual set of plans, they priced the overpass out at equal to or slightly more expensive at that particular point. And they asked, should we go further? And it was the will of the city commission administration that we not go further. So if we proceed, and we certainly can, but if we proceed, I want to be clear about what we're doing. We're not making an apples to apples comparison. The only way to make an apples to apples comparison is to engage an engineering firm like Dow or Staley to do the work that's been done on the underpass, to do a full set of plans that gets approved by the Federal Highway Administration and the Department of Transportation for Montana, and then see what the cost of those two compares. Because simply having Staley do a conceptual set of plans is not an apples to apples comparison. I take exception to what Mr. Kuntz said. That is not what the document from Staley said. And I'll quote the document. The overcrossing design lacks acceptable widths, transitions, tapers, turn lane, stacking depths to meet MDT design standards. So when we make assertions that it doesn't have right-of-way requirements, it will. What we have now is a drawing on the back of a napkin. We don't have the type of plans that we have to get it approved. And the plans that we have approved cost us $1 million to get there. $1 million and a year and a half's work. That's how we'll make an apples to apples comparison, Mr. Chair. We did study the idea of an overpass in the beginning. There was a feasibility study. We had public safety folks involved and transportation folks involved, and it was a pretty thorough process. And we eliminated the overpass because we could see then, just at a very low level comparison, that it was going to be a much more expensive project to undertake. And at this point, even I don't think Mr. Kuntz and Mr. Denton would disagree, it's going to be a more expensive project for us to undertake. To this point, we haven't found the money it would take to build the least expensive project, which is the underpass. I think Dal has done a very good job responding to the specific comments that are in here, so I'll allow time for that to occur later on. I guess another thing I would say too is we had multiple public hearings during both the feasibility study and during the design process. We had public hearings. We invited everybody into this room. We put pictures on the wall. We gave updates. We talked about drainage. We talked about right-of-ways and all those types of things. So we have made an effort, a considerable effort, to inform the community on what was going on. I'm not going to argue with polls in the newspaper. I'm sure those are highly scientific. But what I know is that the city of Livingston voted to build an underpass and they gave this administration $650,000 to do it. And we have been swinging as hard as we can at that ball ever since. The administration, Mr. Chair, remains convinced that the underpass is the most cost-effective solution for our community. And I look forward to any further conversation that influences and persuades others to that same fact. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In regards to Staley's comment about lacking all the things that Mr. Reese just mentioned, is that's based on 60-mile-an-hour speed. And when you cut it down to 45, then Mr. Denton's proposal is on track.
Mr. Chair, may I? So the reason it's based on 60-mile-per-hour speed is because that's the speed that's required by the Department of Transportation, both prior to and once the project area is entered to. That's why you go through a design process, is so you find out what the Department of Transportation is going to require, and you build to their specifications. And that's why it's designed to those speeds. Phil, do you want to talk with that? I disagree. Correct.
We're talking about Highway 10 is the 60-mile-an-hour speed. I'm just going to say this because we can't get you recorded when you're not at the microphone. Dallas said that the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit has to do with Highway 10. Am I correct in that understanding? Doesn't have anything to do with Star Road or Front Road, correct? Okay. So the speed limit on Highway 10 would still be 60 up until a certain point, goes to 45.
That's correct.
Where's it go to 45 at, Chief? Do you know? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So that's one detail. Is there anything else? Any other details you want to discuss? Yes, Mr. Denton.
George Denton, 1300 Georgia Court, Livingston, Montana. And the first thing I would comment about in the feasibility study and the preliminary work done on an overpass was nothing compared to what the overpass that I have proposed. It's totally different. What they proposed back then was typically like a freeway intersection. And of course, the cost would be much higher if you go with that. So like Steve said, it's never been really considered with this conception that I have proposed to the city. Nobody thought about, or I don't know if they thought about it, but nobody put it up to looking into where you design it as I have done. So that's the first thing. And
I want to clarify that because I'm not sure that everyone understands what you're saying there. So what you're saying is that your design is different than what was conceived by the overpass, the railroad crossing in the early stages. Is that what you're saying?
yes,
Yeah. In what way that would have made it, what way?
well, the original design by, I think, the state, I assume the state did it, but in the original preliminary design work done, they had a large ramp that came up and over and then split into two loops to join up with Highway 10. So that's like a freeway interchange.
Coming off of Star Road, drive
Yes,
over
come
and then
up
would,
off of Star Road. Well, no, they didn't come off of Star Road. They came off of Front Street and had a loop joining Star Road also. And then it came up over and then split and made two loops, the way I understand, joining Highway 10, which
is that your understanding as well, Mr. Meese?
That's pretty correct. I don't remember the exact geometry, but
Yeah.
it did go across. You went across and came back to 10.
right, exactly. So that's a lot. That's probably 100 times more bridge structure than what I'm proposing. This is a simple little project. And actually, I'd like to throw in something right now on HKM's bashing me about my credentials. I've never claimed to be a Montana State licensed professional engineer. I've always said that I'm a retired professional engineer, and I'm basing all this design work and everything I've done based on my 40+ years experience. And I have had a lot of experience in doing this very exact type of work.
We're not going to get into back and forth on this.
Right. I just wanted to put that in the record, okay?
All right. If, if we're going to get into questioning credentials, I don't really want to go there. I really want to just, I don't think that's going to have much influence. I'd like to let the chat hang.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Defer this, study. Is that asking for?
That's correct. Just, for say to complete the study that they started. And I think what Staley has shown so far with their conceptual drawings is that you don't need this big elaborate structure to make an overpass. And we took all you out to Highway 10 at Light Sulphur to show you something similar. And my hunch is that nobody ever thought about elevating Highway 10. They just thought about going over top of it with an overpass. And that led to more eminent domain issues for Mr. Voigt and a much more bigger and more expensive project.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, my memory is that with the first phase that we did with Staley, that cost us about $10,000. Is that correct? And they finished somewhere around half. I can't remember, 50%, 60%, something like that. So I guess my question, Mr. Coots, Mr. Denton, would be, in the interest of this project going forward, would your group be willing to do the fundraising to raise $10,000 more to complete the study? Because the mill levy that we have specifically calls out an underpass. And I mean, I guess I would wonder if your group, which seems to be very motivated and sincere, if they're interested in taking on this second piece of work, would they be willing to raise the funds to perhaps meet the city 50-50 on the second phase even? So if the second phase is, and I don't know, we'd have to get the bid from Staley, but if the second phase is going to cost, let's say, another $10,000, would you meet us halfway and raise $5,000 to pay for the second phase, or whatever the half is?
You want to think about that?
Yeah, we want to ponder that one a little bit and at least a couple few more other questions.
Sure. I mean, I'm just thinking about, my concern is that, quite honestly, I don't want to continue to spend money on the underpass that's dedicated for the underpass project. I want to continue to spend it in this competition of projects. And so I just throw that out there. Perhaps a way to go forward on phase 2 is we'll split the cost.
Just think about it. Don't, you don't have to give a meeting answer, just something to consider. You're welcome. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we go to the next?
The only other thing that I would like to see, Staley, the letter that you received in your packet, it's not on the screen thing, but you received it later, but the 4 items that we've listed there, I'd like Staley to be apprised of that and have them consider those 4 items.
I'm sorry, George, which 4 items are you talking about?
On the letter that we wrote, the joint letter from myself, Steve, and
Oh, these 4 on the front page.
right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mr. Dent or Mr. Kuntz? No? All right, this time. Yes, sir.
Couple more items. Is on the feasibility study for the grade separation rental crossing. HDM has indicated none of the work done so far could be reused. This here doesn't apply to full grade separation. So it could be used. Portions that have to be updated and scored and so on, but some of it would be salvageable. And
In other words, the total of $1 million that Mr. Meese mentioned is not totally going to be applicable. It wouldn't all be lost. Because a lot of the work done on the feasibility study could be used because it was done as a grade separated crossing.
That possibility may exist. I'm not necessarily convinced of that because it is a different project and the state has to approve everything we do. So there may be that portion there may not necessarily pan out to be accurate because from what I've seen from the state on these projects that we've dealt with, they're pretty specific about everything we do. When we start a project, it's like a clean slate. And I think we'd be.
Project was started as a grade separated crossing.
I'm not sure. No, no, sir. I don't know. Well, maybe it was, but I know that it was voted on as underpass and the administration has been working on it as underpass. But we'll take that into consideration. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, towards Mr. Denton's comment, just for scope of magnitude, to date, if you count the $1.1 million that's been spent on design, that study cost $70,000, half of which was paid for by Park County and half of which was paid by Livingston. So I'm not sure how much of that study could be replicated. It's possible. But in terms of a scope of magnitude, even if the entire study were to be reusable, you're looking about $70,000 out of, to this point, 1.3 million that's been spent on the project. So a very, very small fraction of work that could be replicated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Well, I have to hand it to you guys. You've done a really good job, presenting your materials and really taking a look at this. And as a commissioner, I appreciate your involvement in the process, and I appreciate everything you've done to this point to inform people and to, best inform the commission as well. So I know that we'd like to probably take some action tonight so that no, I'm not done yet. Take some action so that the administration is clear about where we're going from here, because I know that hinders the administration from proceeding on any direction when we're unclear about our direction as well. So what I'd like to do is, if, unless you guys have something else to present, I think all the material you presented is really good. You know, you met with all of us so that we're informed about your concerns and your thoughts. I think I'd like to also hear from Mr. Odegaard in regards to any other response you have that's not necessarily inside your letter regarding this project. Do you guys, you feel like you've sufficiently said everything you needed to? I don't want you to go away feeling like you missed saying something.
Well, I mean, if in fact we overlook something that's important to you folks, that's what we want to do. And we do think of your endurance. Too.
Yeah.
This is not a lightweight thing.
No. You know, and I'll save my particular comments till the end after we've heard from everyone regarding this issue. Does anyone else want anything specific right now for Mr. Denton and Mr. Kuntz? Okay. All right. It's not done yet until we've moved on to the next one. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Odegaard. You've traveled all this way. If there's anything else you want to add to the discussion here. All right, thank you very much.
I'll just start now. I think that one of the primary issues in this region almost a year ago was the method to come up with a cost to achieve the goals of the project. Everyone agrees. That's good. There might be that little one flies.
Oh, Mr. Odegaard, could you speak into the microphone? Some of the commissioners in the audience can't hear. Thank you very much.
So, you know, as this process started, we indulged and listened to what the proponents of the overcrossing had to say, and you know, can always learn something from the input we get. I mean, that's important. It's part of the public process that makes this system work better. Back when we started the feasibility study, that was a competitive process where several firms proposed on this project and were interviewed by the city, and we were lucky and fortunate enough to be selected by the city. And when I first started negotiating this with Ed, I think we had 5 different locations where we wanted to study, and it kept getting honed down and honed down. And you know, in the end, we looked at the Star Road undercrossing, and one of the first primary issues we looked at is this the right place based on traffic, based on future growth projections, based on what's going to achieve the goals, you know, reduction of emergency response, all of that. And come to find out when the transportation plan was updated, it was indeed the right choice. Was it the best place topographically and all that? No, it wasn't. I mean, there are better places west of town, probably put in an undercrossing cheaper in some spots. There's some places where you could probably put in an overcrossing cheaper. But to get traffic, I mean, we can have a facility out west of town, and if it doesn't get used, then it's not very good from a emergency response perspective or from a public use perspective. So this was the place for a lot of reasons, but it's not perfect. And, you know, we understand that we have to deal with that and mitigate those concerns as best we can so we move forward. But during that feasibility study process, MDT, they look at rail crossings throughout the state, and they're mandated to do that every 10 years. And they're looking at updating their process right now. But we had a report when we had over 24 different types of structures we could look at. And based on the topography and kind of trying to compare what's something similar to here, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time. We didn't draw it up or anything like that, but just in comparing the order of magnitude costs, we came to the conclusion as a committee that, hey, based on the grades, and that's one of the first things we did was went out and we looked at the profile of Highway 10. We looked at the profile of railroad tracks. We looked at the profile of Fleshman Creek, and it was obvious that, okay, with these grade differences and what we'd have to build up versus go down, There's different clearance requirements going over a railroad versus under a railroad. It made sense. Okay, we're going to do less work, earthwork, whether it's fill or cut with an undercrossing. And based on what we had seen in order of magnitude terms, that was the way to go. So that's the way we proceeded. We didn't do this with blinders on. As Ed mentioned, there was a robust public involvement. The city has some great stakeholders. I mean, they have the state, they have the federal government, who are all eminently qualified and are on board with the proposed solution as the most cost-effective solution. In Montana, our infrastructure dollars are pretty pretty low. I mean, we don't have a lot of money to spend. And what we do, we're very judicious with those dollars. So cost is a big thing, along with safety and all of that. So that was taken into account. We want to, if an overcrossing was a more cost-effective solution, believe me, we would be going with the overcrossing. I think it's just a matter of interpretation and where you're coming from. And you know, when I read Staley's letter, it's like, okay, this puts this to rest. And if we went back to the estimate where we compared those, it's like they estimated about half the project, maybe a little bit more, and they were at 10 million. For that same component, we were at between 7 and 8 million. And it's like, okay, there's a lot more to go. And I think that proved things out. So that's where I'm at. You know, I think, you know, I applaud the proponents and all of that, but I think, you know, the city, MDT, FHWA have done their homework. They've looked at this critically. I mean, they're really concerned about cost too, and all the issues brought forward. We understand that there are all these problems as far as that we've had to deal with, and we're mitigating with drainage, with drifting snow, those kinds of issues. So that's where I'm at. You know, we've provided detailed answers to the letter, or detailed response to those. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is there any questions, Mr. Odegaard? Okay. Is there any public comment and public questions, Mr. Meese? Anything? Okay. You know, I think I'll go ahead and say something first, if that's okay. I think personally, when I first heard about Mr. Denton's idea and the cost issue, I thought, wow, maybe we can get something, you know, something out there cheaper. When it didn't seem to necessarily go that direction, one of the things that came up to me that has always been a concern, probably will be a concern, you know, because, you know, when we do the underpass, we do lose Sunrise Drive. That is a concern to me. And I've gone up there and looked, and I'm not an engineer. I don't have a degree in engineering, but I don't see any way we're going to get access for those folks out of that area. It's just not going to happen. Lisa, can you get a map of Livingston or no? There's a map. The best thing I can do is point you to the map on the wall over here. You know, when I just did a quick look at it, and it's very unscientific. When we look at, you know, and I'd like both you guys to address my concern as well. When we look at that particular crossing, I'm thinking, okay, what's the purpose of the crossing? We know that in our discussions that, yes, in the event of a unpassable B Street underpass and 5th Street being clogged with train traffic, any type of emergency situation in that part of town, that underpass, overpass is going to be valuable. But when we check with the police chief in 25 years, that's never been a problem. So if that's not really the problem, the case is mainly traffic flow with a growing city, which is an important issue as well. You know, I think that road in both of those circumstances is valuable, and we're letting go of something that is extremely important to both of those issues. Because if you look at Sunrise Drive, and I think I'm the only one that lives in that area, but if you look at Sunrise Drive coming off of that hill, and you kind of tabulate up the properties up there that would benefit by having that access as well. If we build an underpass and we lose that access, basically what you've done is you've taken 10 to 15% of the properties in Livingston and said, we've spent $10 to $15 million creating an underpass so that you can have access, but now we're cutting you guys off from that access, and you still have to go all the way around. By that time, they got to come out, they got to either take 9th Street over to Ridge Route Trails and snake through that subdivision and come down by the cemetery and come out that way, or they got to go down the hill and feed out 7th and 8th Street. And at that point, they can look left and they can look right. If the left is clear, they're going to go out 5th. If the right is, if it's not, they can go out 7th or go down to the B Street underpass. So if you look at, you know, the growth of the city out west and the amount of properties that are in those areas and the amount of properties that would be firstly served by that, we're cutting off about 50% of the properties right off the bat by closing Sunrise Drive to those properties that are directly benefiting from that underpass being in that area. So that to me, once I learned that that road would actually be cut off, it's always been a really, I've contemplated that, always been a concern, because we're promoting this as access and we're promoting it as safety. But at the same time, what we're doing is we're cutting off a certain percentage of the population right off the bat by closing Sunrise Drive. That to me is kind of a disturbing proposition, that we're spending that amount of money and closing off access to half the people who are going to benefit it. Because if you take everyone, and I always get messed up with the directions of Livingston, everyone up, if you look at Park Street coming through there, that's the kind of the olive green road. Everyone on the right of Park Street, they're really not going to use that access unless they're going to go up to the soccer fields, which is another thing. We have all these soccer fields up there that are going to get used by people, and now instead of having that direct access up Sunrise Road, we're going to force them over to 7th and 8th Street and funnel through those residential areas in order to get to the soccer fields. Or, you don't see that, Mel? You don't see people going up Sunrise? Well, you're wrong, actually. You actually, okay. Okay, so the idea is that, you know, people going up Sunrise to soccer fields, they're going to come from different communities, cross that road, cross that crossing, and then have to go over to 7th and 8th Street in order to funnel through all the residential areas in order to get up to the soccer fields. So to me, that's a concern when we're looking at accessibility, traffic flow, and safety. To spend that amount of money and then cut people off from it immediately just seems counterproductive. So, you know, I'd like someone to really address that, because I don't see that, with the underpass, I don't see that as fixable. I've looked up there. I don't know any other access that they're going to bring down off of that hill unless they really do come off Sunrise and fix Sunrise and come over to the right along the hill and down or something. I don't even know if that's possible. So those are my comments, and those are my concerns about both both issues. Please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
I am Barbara Dean, 419 North 6th Street, Livingston, Montana. Telephone 222-2326 if you have any comments. I do believe that there is a site on the web, livingstonoverpass.com.us. If you go to that site, which you have computer access, you have a clearer lay of the land. You know, looking at this map and proposing 7th and 6th and 5th and all of this, the other way, it shows the actual truck stop and all the area that you will be dealing with. You might want to consider looking at it. Thank you.
So anyway, anyone who would like to address that concern, I'd appreciate it because I don't see any solution for that right at the moment.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Certainly, the Sunrise Drive issue has been on the table since the feasibility study. I mean, the feasibility study called out the need to eliminate Sunrise Drive. I think one of the things that we get hung up in, this is my opinion, Mr. Chair, is that if we build the overpass, we're going to do something fantastic and marvelous with Sunrise Drive. We don't know that. We don't know that. We would not build Sunrise Drive today. Sunrise Drive is not a street you would build today because of its grade and the conditions that it creates in the wintertime and other times of the year. It's not a street we would build today. I did ask Dow HKM to look at this. I've provided that document to the city commission. Hey, look at it again. Tell us, is there any, the problem that you have with the grade is that while you have an existing street that we wouldn't build today, when you go to mess with it, we're going to have to build it to today's standards. And to do that on that particular hillside, the professional engineers of Dow HKM Engineering are telling us it can't be done in a cost-effective, cost-efficient way. Certainly, the administration has always shared your concern about having to close Sunrise Drive as part of this particular. What we've always said was that related to this project was going to be having to construct some other type of access. And we've recognized that since the feasibility study to avoid the type of thing you're talking about, Mr. Chair. I certainly would agree with you in terms of some of the traffic patterns that you described. I don't agree with you with regard to the soccer. I don't think it's a big issue, but the soccer field has parking, has actually a rather large parking lot off of Star Road. And I would envision that we would have it signed. We actually should have it signed now when we don't. Have it signed for folks going to go both directions, whichever way is most feasible. I think one of the things that provided the city commission before was we did a short traffic study on Sunrise Drive. And I'd have to go back and check with this, but I believe we did it during, we did it on a Saturday. So we had soccer traffic involved. And we had 200, I think it was 260 total trips on Sunrise that day, on a soccer day. And then earlier in the week, it was significantly less. I think it was in the 1-somethings, 160s, 170s, I believe. So it is used. It's not used heavily in compared to other streets in that particular region. But it is a used thoroughfare. And that is a point you've made before with regard to emergency access. It is part, I mean, it is there if you have to get someplace as quickly as possible. But, you know, to me, the answer here is not, do we do the overpass or the underpass based on Sunrise? It is, we do the most effective grade crossing we can, and we find the different access that we need. Because I'm not convinced, Mr. Chair, that if we do the overcrossing, what we won't have to, that we can do anything bigger, better with Sunrise. And I think Dow's actually, or Staley wanted to actually address that. But I mean, certainly respect what you're saying. If I had a silver bullet answer, I would provide it.
Thank you. Mr. Denton? Mr. Fred? Fred, come up to the microphone. Sorry, come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Fred Schellenberg, 221 South 10th, Livingston, 59047. I'd like to reminisce just a little bit. I like to reminisce on studies. I've kind of made a few informal studies of studies. And I'd like to go back in history just a little bit. I recall we hired a firm from New Mexico. New Mexico, that's way down south. And their suggestions were, they were here. I never did know what it cost, but I was somewhat involved in it. Their main recommendation was that we make a mall out of Main Street and no cars would be parked there at all. We'd buy up land around to park cars off street. The only real souvenir we have of that study is the corner there by the Ebert Apartments across from the library, that round corner there that cuts down on parking and narrows the street. That was one of their recommendations. When I was on the City County Planning Board, that it happened before I was on the board, but we did look at the study, a $40,000 traffic study of Livingston. The two recommendations that I remember best are a stoplight at the Murray Hotel with an island between the Murray and the depot, a built-up island for the 2 lanes of traffic. And on the B Street underpass, there were 15 stoplights, 15 of those 3-light stoplights. That was a $40,000. I knew what the cost of that one was. That was a $40,000 traffic study. Anyway, I'm not even going to talk about the Octagon jail that we talked about. And I am going to mention the redoing the floors at the Civic Center last year in December. We brought a Wyoming firm in to do that. Nobody was really smart enough in Livingston to do that. A study, even that $40,000 traffic study, I question, other than writing it up, whether they spent over 40 or 50 hours in Livingston and they counted a few cars at a crossing and a few things like that. A study is, they love them. The New Mexico firm got paid, even if we did only put one corner in the way they said we should. They'll come up again if you want them to come up. They'll do a study on this if you'd like to have another firm come in. That's all I've got to say. We don't have much brains in Livingston, I'll grant you, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Fred. That was very inspiring. Thank you. Mr. Denton?
Denton again. I do want to explain that on the overpass, Sunrise Drive would be rerouted, basically a turn to the east and then down the hill and onto Front Street. By doing that, it lengthens the distance on Sunrise Drive, and by doing the overcrossing, the grade on Front Street is raised up quite a bit. So in essence, what that does is decreases the grade from 17% down to 7% approximately. So I think that's a huge advantage, and it keeps Sunrise open, and it makes a very good access to it.
Thank you very much. Okay. The only caveat I'd like to add on that is whatever we do, it still has got to be approved by the state. And so the state has to approve that type of stuff. So anyway, Yes, Mr. Stern. Yes, if you have a comment, come on up to the microphone and state your name and the address, name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Paul Gaffney, 404 South G Street, Livingston. Could you put the cursor on Sunrise Drive for me, please?
Click and drag it. There you go. Sometimes you got to use two fingers on the pad. Yeah, there it is. Over to your left. Right there. Right. Nope. Oh, over to your right. Point to it, George. Point to it, George.
And the proposed underpass, would you put the cursor on that for me also, please?
It would just be,
It basically just comes right off the intersection.
It's straight off, straight through. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, is there any other public comment, commission comment on this issue? Mr. Stern. Oh, Barbara, go ahead.
Okay, we just pointed out Sunrise Drive and the proposed underpass. So where would the proposed overpass be?
Same location. You're welcome. Mr. Stern, Commissioner Stern.
Trying to bring some sort of closure up to this. Gotta appreciate George and Steve and all the efforts and the dedication they brought to this for sure. And George is a great volunteer and a great, he sits on the Parks and Trails Committee. Steve is a super funny guy. And you guys have put a huge amount of time into this. And so, of course, you know, when you get citizens that are this committed and involved, you gotta say thank you. And so thank you for all your time and all of that. Right, Mr. Gravage earlier, last time he visited us, also said that overpass design that was presented was like a big clover leaf. That being said, Mr. Gravage also said that a good example of the underpass as being designed is over there at the Belgrade interchange that's being put in at the airport, and that's a good look at underpass. You know, ultimately, you guys, for every engineering claim, there's an engineering counterclaim, and vice versa. And so, my personal engineering staff, as a single commissioner, you know, they've said basically it's a wash. Maybe if you started from scratch, it would be a wash. Maybe not. But fundamentally, as a commissioner on this body, you got to go with the engineering firm that our administration has chosen and whose contract we approve. I guess if we had been at the very beginning, we could do more diligence in looking at the various alternatives. But given that, you know, for every claim, there's a counterclaim and vice versa. And my own folks tell me that it's a wash. You know, most folks don't care if it's an overpass or an underpass, and I don't think popularity is the correct way to make this decision anyway. But most folks just want a crossing. And so while I appreciate your efforts and I see that you guys have put all this diligence into it, the technical merits of one path or the other don't jump out to me. And so that drives me to say that the decision's already been made. It's been made by multiple commissions. We've already generated some revenue for this project. And I think it's, as a commission, we ought to just we need to move forward with that decision. Once the decision's been made, now it's time to take action. Everybody has to jump on board and get this thing done. Most folks just want a crossing. It does sound like Sunrise Drive is an issue, and perhaps maybe we could dedicate some resources to looking into potential options as the preliminary engineering work, and or maybe instead of spending money to continue the debate on overpass or underpass, we could consider spending money on coming up with solutions to the elimination of Sunrise Drive. There might be multiple solutions. I don't want to speculate, but there might be multiple solutions that haven't been investigated yet, or have been investigated only in a preliminary way. I would be more amenable to putting resources to solving the Sunrise Drive issue rather than to continue the debate on the overpass, underpass. If you guys are into fundraising and you want to fundraise for some of these engineering studies, I mean, you could, that's definitely an interesting possibility. George, I know, could think of some good fundraising projects from work on the parks and trails. We could come up with some. You guys are very motivated. You definitely have a strong community behind you. Love to harness some of that energy. Do something real constructive with it. I mean, I think you guys are totally awesome. But that being said, the decision on the overpass, underpass has been made. The resources have been allocated. I feel like we're too far along with the process to turn back now, and it's time to get this project done. And to that point, Mr. Meese, were we going to have a discussion at some point about levy capabilities?
We are, Commissioner Stern. I continue to beseech our bond experts to give us that number. And so I haven't spoke with them this week, but they're on my list for this week. Yeah.
So, well, so that's how I feel personally, and we're just going to have to agree to disagree. That being said, I totally respect all the time and effort you put into this. George, we'll see you on next Wednesday's Parks and Trails meeting. Thank you.
Further commission discussion? Comments, questions? Yes, public comment. Go ahead, come on up, come on. Now you realize this isn't the dog issue. Okay, all right.
Wendy Cole, 417 South 2nd Street. My question is, with Bozeman being a university town, is there not an engineering school there? Can some of these questions be presented to the engineering students there? I mean, it won't cost. And I know we've done that at Lehigh University, which is a big engineering school. And it might be able to provide you, even just with Sunrise Drive, some alternatives or some different eyes on a product that could possibly satisfy more citizens. Just a thought.
Good idea. Thank you very much. Any other commission discussion? All right. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see anything.
Everyone else.
Commissioner Hoagland, you have the floor.
Sorry. We talked quite at length at the time we met, and I am of a lot of the statements Adam was making about, okay, we have this and we have this, and we keep kind of weighing them. And you know, if we have a problem with one thing, we have another problem with something else. And I keep trying to find like the what do they say? The silver bullet that says the underpass is completely inappropriate. It's the wrong path that we're taking, and we're not finding it because there's good things that will come of that, as you know, and that are doable, feasible, all this. And then there's the same with the overpass. So I keep looking for something to help me to decide one way or the other. And I think the thing that I'm finding is that what is making me decide for the underpass is that we already have appropriated monies that will go only and can be only used for an underpass. And to lose that money, I think, is a big deal. And another issue is for me, and I said this to you guys before, is the view shed. I do have a huge problem with it. It's not a small hill that will block the view of all those homes in that area. It is a pretty huge monolith, sort of, I guess is the word. And I too, I have stated it here that sunrise is a concern to me. I would hope that we find an alternative. I'm not okay with us not finding an alternative, and I believe there is one. I'm not sure what it is yet because I'm not an engineer, but I do believe there's something. There's something we can do. And we have gone a long ways in this process, and I've been only a part of it for a small time compared to the years put ahead of or behind us. And if we were going in the wrong direction, it's like this is our path. If this path was leading us off a cliff because it was such a bad idea, I would say let's research and go forward with the overpass. But the underpass isn't leading us off a cliff into the worst decision Livingston has ever made. So I have to continue, or at some point, stop the process of talking about it and move forward. And I do appreciate the work for sure, and the communities want and supports, and we're listening. But again, I just don't see one outweighing the other, and because we've gone so far with one, I think I have to stay on that path. That's all.
Any other commission discussion?
I think, I mean, it's good to continue talking about this. But I talked to Steve today, and I recalled last time we voted on spending more money to look at this. It was 5-0 that we didn't spend more money, which I still feel the same way. But the engineering fees, you know, to get that right so we can compare apples to apples. And the last meeting I was at 2 meetings ago brought this up, about more discussion on it. And Mr. Gravich reminded me that it wasn't an apples to apples comparison. So I think that even the 7,000, you know, it's not just that; it would be that engineering fee, you know. So I think it's just the cost of it. It's just tough, you know. It's just really tough to put that on the community. Like, hey, we're gonna do this, and it may turn out that we can't save Sunrise Drive or some of these other things that you brought up here. I think that's the big thing for me is the money part of it, on the study and the engineering part. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say at this point.
Any other public comment before we bring this to close? Public comment before we bring this to close? All right. So as a chairman, what I feel like we need to clarify for the administration moving forward is that we either do one of two things. We either take a vote regarding expending money for a Staley engineering project, or give the administration clear direction that we're going to go one direction or other, and they can go forward with that in confidence. So what be it, commissioners?
I move we affirm the decision to move forward with an undertaking.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion. We've had lots of discussion. Public comment. No one wants to comment. All right, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington.
Yes.
Commissioner Stern. Commissioner Friedman.
Four.
Motion passes. Want to thank you guys very much for coming out and doing all the hard work you did. It's just that there wasn't the support there to go forward with another study and spend that money. So I do apologize for that. Thank you, Mr. Odegaard, for coming out tonight and traveling from Helena. Okay, thank you very much. And we're going on to, so now the administration, you are clear. This is the direction of the commission, and you won't have to stop and start. Okay, is that acceptable to you? All right. Okay, so we are moving on to action item D. Discuss an update from the city manager regarding progress on dog enforcement issues. Mr. Meese.
So, Mr. Chair, I wanted to put this on this evening. I know this was a topic of discussion several times, and Ms. Cole is here this evening as well. Ms. Cole and I met, had very, very good conversation, and she made some excellent suggestions that we have started the wheels on. Basically, since the last time that we discussed it here with the city commission, we being the administration, we've started some efforts with regard to signing some of these areas a little more appropriately. The signage doesn't look the same as some of the other signage, so we're actually going to go back and sort of redo our designs on some of those things. Another of the suggestions that Ms. Cole came up with, which I think is really an excellent no-brainer, is to, when we distribute dog licenses, to give people a map at that time of where our leash, unleash areas are within the community. And so we're working with GIS to start to put that together. I think probably the biggest thing that came from our conversation, though, really is to, again, work more closely with law enforcement and with Ms. Roy, get some appropriate signage down there in the particular areas. But one of the things that we want to do, and I'm going to work with GIS to basically produce a map of our dog areas within town and bring those and discuss that with the city commission at a later date when we've got that ready. Because I think if you step back and take sort of a bird's eye view, what you'll see is that we're sending some mixed messages within the park. We have areas that are no dogs. We have areas that are dogs on a leash only, and we have areas that are dogs off a leash, and you have to go through one to get to the other to get to the other. And so I think probably the biggest good that we can do here is to take a policy look at the park in general and at that extended area in general, and to say, okay, what makes the most sense from the standpoint of how animals and their owners move through the park and the trails, and where do we want to encourage what activities. And so that's something else that we're working on, and I'm going to have Ms. Cole work with us on that, so we can come back and just take more of a policy view of the ordinances as they exist now as to where we allow certain things. We talked about another very good suggestion was providing a separate tag for, give me the right word for that, service animals, so that when a service animal, by certain standards, that it is a service animal, when it gets a dog tag, that it's a different kind of dog tag. So it's readily identifiable, that the city has seen that the dog has met certain standards and is a legitimate service animal, not a companion animal. Is that the term? Understanding that there are differences between the two. So, there's a lot of things that we have on the burner at the moment. We had a couple personnel issues and other things kind of jump in front of it last week, but we're going to continue to work with Ms. Cole and try and get some resolution on these issues. Is there anything you would add to that?
Those sound like great ideas.
I think one of the questions that I really asked, and I don't know if you had a chance to get this, were how many citations have been issued for the ordinances that are on the books, so that you can see what is being enforced and what's not being enforced.
I haven't had a chance to get that yet. No, I haven't even asked the question. It's my fault.
And I don't know, there should be a way to just pull that information out, because I think that will be a good indicator as to where we can focus the personnel. Does that make sense?
Certainly, because with that, we should be able to tell not just what, but where, and geographic locations.
Exactly. Also, I forwarded the article about the Bozeman leash law now everywhere. because of that reason, being that most of the people that have their animals off a leash say, oh, it's a leash free zone. So I think we have too many incongruities within the ordinances as well. So I think it really does need to be addressed. And I hate to be the squeaky wheel, but I have seen far too many damaged animals, damaged children. And if you get out there and talk to the people and walk, you will see every day there's violations. Every day. So please consider it because of I definitely think that we need to be more considerate of our animal owners and also of our animals. And most of all, the environment in the park. Thank you. We have had some good conversations. We can just get some things done. Oh, by the way, nice signage. It just needs more because there need to have more signage because people just don't know. But like I said in my letter, if you read it, Judy pointed out to me that I had my little 7-pound dog off my leash in an area that was a leashed area. So I can make mistakes and I didn't even see the signs. So it needs to be bigger and more clear. And we do need a garbage can in that 9th Street area so that they can put the waste bags in there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate all your hard work on that. And you too. All right. Yes, sir. You have a public comment on this issue. Come on up. Speak, get over right to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. We even have information here. Okay. Go, Wayne.
Wayne Fink, 614 North G Street. I'm not going to read down through all this. I'll let you deal with that. Just a couple comments. One, I really think we need to take a real hard consideration that all dogs are on leashes, all places in the public way. I've walked down to the bank by the bond shell 2 of the last 4 Saturdays, and both times observed a dog squatting that wasn't on a leash, and the owner was anywhere within 20 to several hundred feet away from the animal. I am a dog lover, but I believe there needs to be a responsibility with it. I was raised in a family with dogs. We had dogs for our children. I have no opposition there, except when they're not properly restrained, and that was part of the deal when I was getting the fence for the deer and the dogs and all those things. So I think my biggest concern is simply if they're on a leash, the owner knows if they're stopping to do their whatever. Okay. If they're not, they don't know. And walking around, there's a lot of dog owners that are irresponsible. It is the minority. I know that. And that's the hard part of any ordinance. But what ordinance do we have that is on the books because of the majority of the citizenry? I can't think of one. They're there because the minority of the citizenry that is not responsible. And that's unfortunate, but that is reality. So that's my basic concern there. The other thing with the citations that I have identified on here, I think it's so important. There has to be support from the top down, because that person's going to get a lot of heat for doing their responsibility. Those of you who know me as a crossing guard know I get a lot of heat from a lot of people, but that's diminished. It's taken 5 years, but it's diminished. And now there's a lot of support for it, but you still get it. You're going to get it, but you have to have the support from the top down. And so whatever decisions are made, that is extremely important for our law enforcement and for our dog catcher and anybody involved with it, that they have the backing. They need to know they have the backing. And I pray the backing's there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Okay. Right, is there any other public comment? Another public comment on this issue? Yes, sir. Come on up. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Toby Undum, 325 East Gallatin Street. I just want to say, I heard that it's a $150 fine for first offense. Is that true?
Please.
I didn't know. Chief, yeah, I mean, we can certainly get that.
That's what the animal control lady said that you guys were pushing for, was $150 first offense. I think that's a little, way out of line, not just a little out of line.
I have to apologize. I'm not sure what the first offense citation is, but I'll find out for you.
I have seen some signs that say dogs off leash, $150 fine. So I've seen that.
The other thing, it should depend on the dog. I can see where a lot of dogs have to be leashed. I've got a dog that you couldn't pry her away from my hip. She goes wherever I go. There's no need for a leash. Judy knows that. I walk in my little neighborhood. I've done it for 40 years. I don't have to leash them. I train my dogs. I don't think I or my dog should be penalized because other people don't train their dogs. So that's all I want to say. It's an unfair law.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this issue? Other public comment? Yes.
I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes is not requiring mandatory leashing. Because like this gentleman said, he knows his dog is under control until another animal there. Animals are still animals. And like we saw with that woman who got terribly maimed by 3 animals when a pack instinct happens. And this is what happened that I saw within the park. So we have a ordinance that says under voice command, and that is a very gray area. I mean, I can whistle that a dog can hear and be at my side, but a lot of people don't understand what the ordinances say. And like this gentleman said also, is that the ordinances are in place not for the people that do good like this gentleman over here. They're in the place for most of the people that are breaking the ordinances and are not training their animals and are not cleaning up. And unless, like Judy said, unless I'm there, I can't ticket. You need to be there. Like I said, I'm in the park every morning from about anywhere from 8 o'clock until, and I walk a lot because I have back issues. But there are so many violations just on the one raised area that any police officer that would drive by could see it. There's animals running free all the time. And that's what I really do believe we need to see, how many citations are being written. And I know it's not a priority, just like DUI checks are not a priority on a regular basis. But I think we need to make it a priority, maybe just for a couple months or so, just to set the precedence. And I don't think $150 is too big of a fine, because that says a big thing that if you do break the law, you're going to have to be penalized for it. The only thing is that we're not enforcing. Like the gentleman at the park said, I'll start following the ordinances when they start enforcing them. It's top down. It's the responsibility of the city to protect the people. One of the comments that was made in the article about Bozeman was that dogs do not belong in parks where people and children are. And being a dog owner forever, I've seen what dogs can do to children. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of these kids that have animals do not understand how lethal an animal can be. So thanks again. I just really see a need. And if I can help, I will. Thank you.
Right, commission comments on this issue? Okay.
I know in California where I grew up, I go back there now and I try to take my dogs on the state beach. They've had so many complaints about it that none of the state beaches you can allow dogs on now. And, you know, it's just a bummer because I grew up taking my dogs up there and run them on the beach. So they just said, forget it. You know, it's supposed to be on a leash. They didn't have the officers to, the rangers to patrol the beaches. Now it's easy. If you drive by and you see a dog, you get a ticket. I'm just afraid, you know, if we keep pushing this stuff, because I have friends that live on 10th Street, their dogs run, they're well trained. Judy knows the dogs, and she used to let them. They'd go down the water park run and come back to the house. He's lived here all his life, and I know he's concerned about some of these laws with his dogs. And I just see it maybe going in the direction of, you know, I really understand where you're coming from, but I'm just afraid that, you know, if this doesn't get taken care of and people keep making a big deal out of it, maybe it'll just be no dogs, you know, no dogs in the park at all, you know. And that'd be an easy solution. It'd be sad, but it'd be an easy solution. You see a dog, you get a ticket. But I just know that's the way it went there, and it's really hard. Now when I go back there to try to find a spot, I can run my dog. Everywhere they've shut it down, you know, and it's just it's very unfortunate. So anyway, I don't know. I'm definitely into laws, but I'm also at the same time, you know, having your right to, you know, walk your dog. And Toby, you know, I know his dog's, you know, well trained, and I don't know, but how do you, you know, you can't say, okay, it's okay for you and not okay for you. It's just going to be, it might just come to the point where it's just, all right, no more dogs, and it's everybody uses it. So I would just be cautious. I think so. Thank you.
Any more commission comments?
I just had a question, Ed. Did we plan on putting up more of the cleanup station / garbage can areas in that plan? We had talked about it a little
Well,
bit.
that was one of the things that we talked about with Ms. Cole as well. I think we need to look into that. I mean, I think one of them, like she just mentioned tonight, is down there at the 9th Street, at the back of the old Waterworks building, where we have a leased area there. That might be a good spot for one. But anywhere we have one of those dispensers and one of those cans means we have to have somebody go and deal with it too. So simply proliferating those all over town increases the responsibility to go around and pick those up as well. So you know, I want to be strategic about that. I don't want to just proliferate them everywhere, because I think Wayne raised a good point. I mean, I'm not sure that the city should be in the role of subsidizing the plastic bag industry. We can all access plastic bags if that's what somebody needs for a walk. So I just want to provide them in public places if that's where we want animals to be, and then otherwise put that responsibility on the property.
Well, the garbage cans are a different issue than the plastic bags, though, too, you know.
In addition to the garbage cans. So it just becomes an extra set of garbage cans. If you
Well, we talked about the garbage cans before. And I always believe that if there's garbage cans and there's access, people use them. They throw things away that should be in the garbage can versus throwing it on the ground, or leaving it on the ground in this case. So just my feelings on that.
We have those bags available in several spots, and pretty obvious that folks don't take advantage of that system.
Okay, so you have your direction, right?
Mr. Chair, we are going to continue as we have been.
Okay.
So
All right.
we'll come back
Do you need
for.
any more clarity from the commission?
No, I think we're good right now. We'll come back with more updates and longer to-do list as time goes on.
We have come to that wonderful portion of the meeting where the city manager and commission and the public get to say what they want. City manager comments.
Chair, just a couple of things. I know I provided a comment in the packet, and then a couple of other things I want to speak to real quick that have come up since that time. So at a prior city commission meeting, there was question regarding the appointment process and the appointment requirements for the Livingston Restoration Group. And I provided a comment in the packet. Ms. Llewellyn did a great job researching that for us. And what we know is that the city's appointment does not have to be a city commissioner. It could be a member of city staff. It could be another member of the community at large. So I know there was some discussion about appointing a new individual to serve in that capacity. If the city commission is so inclined, we can certainly advertise for that.
Are you so advertise for someone else for the opening, but we're not going to utilize a city commissioner? Is that what you said?
My understanding was that Commissioner Stern currently serves in that capacity and would like to not currently serve in that capacity. That we had no one else on the city commission that was able to serve at this time. And so the question came up, well, does it have to be a city commissioner? And the answer is no, it doesn't.
Okay.
So if someone on the city commission wants to serve, that's fine. If not, then my suggestion would be that we advertise and see if there is someone interested in the community.
Okay, is that the pleasure of the commission? Have the city manager advertise for someone to fill that slot. I see 4 heads nodding. That's an affirmative.
Okay, we will take that direction.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I guess the most important thing that I want to talk about this evening that's come up since it's come up since the packet was put out, is that the city of Livingston has selected a new police chief. And in fact, that individual is with us here tonight. And so I want to make mention of that after a very grueling process, I think in his words, sometimes awkward, odd, but after a very grueling process, acting police chief and currently interim police chief, until a short period of time ago, Dale Johnson has been offered and accepted the role of regular permanent police chief for the city of Livingston. So I wanted to say congratulations.
Hey. There you go. Right. You can get out of your chair. You can move those legs. Yeah. Make the rounds. Ladies first. Okay, congratulations. There you go. But hang in there.
I needed to stand up anyway.
Yeah.
Chief, any comments you want to add?
Not a whole lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Look forward to that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. A couple of other things I wanted to bring to the attention of the city commission that have popped up. One, was contacted by Tim Burton, the new executive director for the Montana League of Cities, and they have found a sponsor for a piece of legislation that would bring back the issue of a local option tax. Basically, that would allow the cities to put the issue before their voters, just as it has existed before. They have found a sponsor, and before introduction of the bill, the sponsor has set some kind of I don't know what the number is, but a minimum number of letters of support that they would like to carry with them when they introduce this bill. So Mr. Burton has been very rapidly trying to accumulate those letters of support. He had some deadlines which did not facilitate me being able to bring it before the city commission tonight first. So I went ahead and provided a letter of support on behalf of the administration. It was very clear that it was the administration. If the city commission wants to do something similar to that, I certainly won't hurt my feelings, and I can bring something to you at the next meeting to do that. I simply had to do this from a timing perspective. And I tried to be very clear that it was on behalf of the administration. So we will see if that gets any legs and walks out. Again, the bill's not been introduced yet. The sponsor has got a quota of these types of things. So that letter was provided, and it will get to the rest of our delegation probably tomorrow. I'll make sure that they all get a copy of that. Another bill that we just got information on today, I provided an email to the city commission from, again, the League of Cities and Towns, Senate Bill 301. Interesting piece of legislation, because while cities in every state I'm familiar with, utilities are typically exempt from Public Service Commission regulation, this one would set a cap on the annual increase of revenues at 4.5% in any one year. And then it has some different pieces to it. Certainly understand what the sponsor is after here, but as the city commission is aware, for instance, with the project at the wastewater treatment plant, we had to do some pretty substantial increases to be able to afford just the debt service to do that project. So this is one that we're going to track pretty seriously. I think there's a hearing later this week, on Thursday. I'm already working up with that. May attend that with Mr. Kukulski and some others later this week as well. So I'll keep you updated on that particular issue. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That last issue, has that reached the floor? Or is that still in committee?
It's still in committee at this point, Mr. Chair. It will go to the Senate Energy Committee Thursday at 3 p.m. So
Okay.
we'll be there to listen.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Friedman.
Yes, after all the dog talk, I'm reaching my limit here, I'll tell you that. But I didn't bring a baggie or anything. I want to thank the commission for some good, clear thinking tonight. So a lot of difficult issues, and appreciate that. And it's going to be a good year. Some good stuff going on, so look forward to it.
Mr. Stern.
Thank you. The house in Sacagawea Park. What's the plan on that?
The house in Sacagawea Park, we have been getting estimates, and finally we have a contractor in place to remove some of the asbestos that was discovered in there. You actually have to have two separate contractors, one that does the mitigation and then another one that independent contractor that comes in and performs an air quality test. And so getting the first one was easy, getting the second one was difficult, but they have to be basically brought together at the same time. We've finally done that. And I think we'll have those contracts for the next meeting, Jeff, for the third meeting in March. Once we get those signed, they'll need probably a week to 10 days to get their work done. And then we're going to try and get that back on track for demolition.
So we think that might be done by
That would be a goal. I think certainly the problem that we face, the challenge that we face is how it eventually times out against the work demands in the Public Works Department. So if it gets too late in the spring, then it becomes more difficult for our guys to get to it. We attempted to negotiate with a couple of folks locally, but the prices were pretty high. And those prices were in addition to them taking the house. I think $18,000 was where we ended the one, Shannon. So $18,000 plus them taking the house away, or keeping the house, if you will. So that's
moving forward.
we are.
All right. With respect to the local option, as an individual commissioner, I certainly support that. So I don't know in what dimension you want support. I'm pretty sure that's a recommendation. Bring something forward as a commission. When will this be on the floor?
I don't know yet. I think part of that depends on when the sponsor. I mean, they're the one in control of when it gets introduced.
Well, I would certainly be in support of with either individual from the commission as a whole. The critical right. And the other one, this bill, Senate Bill 301, is troubling. So I mean, like you said, I understand the sentiment, but it has 4 criteria. The first one has a quantitative assessment. The other 3 are emotional and subjective, and classic elements of bad policy. And so this is just dangerous all around. Whatever we can do to help out on that effort.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoagland.
Only thing I'm going to talk about tonight is Rachel Feigley, who is the chair of the Parks and Trails, is going to resign her post, and we are sad at that prospect, but also happy for her future. She's moving into a bigger role in her career. But I want to just thank her for her service, and I think the community should. She works really hard for Parks and Trails, and she leads us well. She has a lot of answers for things and experiences with our community. So I wanted to just point her out to everyone and thank her publicly. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do you want to craft a letter that the commission can sign, thanking her for her service? In your spare time? I mean, it doesn't have to be a dissertation. Or a writing, it can be just a, thank you that we can all sign.
We'll do that. Good point.
Giving a teacher a writing assignment. All right. I don't have anything really of significance here. Just to mention, if for those who haven't been following, the city commission did go through the first phase of budgeting for the next fiscal year with our CIP process. So just want to get that out there so that anyone who is interested will know that we did start. First meeting was in January, right? February. Yeah, first meeting was in February, and it will culminate in accepting a budget in May or June. So just so people know that we have started the process of figuring out how the city will spend its money for the next fiscal year. And when we come to the meeting for a vote, we'll have probably met 6, maybe 7 times about all these issues. So when you come to object, please come well informed. Well informed. All right, that's all I have to say. Is there any public comment? This is time for the public. Anyone who wants to say anything? Mr. Frank, come on up and name and address for the record. I noticed we don't have our sign-in book there.
Wayne Fink, 614 North G Street. How many have seen the new stop signs they have down at the crosswalks coming down Main Street towards the high school? Has everybody seen them?
Enough kids you have.
Yeah. I want to commend the city and those involved with making that decision to purchase those on a trial basis where they're locating them. But I'll tell you, they moved 2 further down to that crosswalk that we don't have a crossing guard at in the morning or the afternoon. And I'll tell you, it slowed the traffic down, which I kind of thought it might. And I want to acknowledge that, as well as he's chief now, but when I mentioned the meeting about more frequent visitation by our law enforcement down around the schools in the morning and the afternoon, they have done that very well, and it has had a very positive impact. So commendations for that as well from my observation. Thank you.
Any other public comment on any subject? Now's the time when you can say anything you want. All right. Going once, going twice. We're done. Unless were you getting ready to move in there, Barbara? Okay, you're done. Okay. Okay. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 9:28. That's close.
No. I was counting something else. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you.
What's that, sir? Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, you're welcome. Did you?
I know that was spent a lot of time on it.
It was a difficult one. These guys put in a lot of good work trying to.
Convince the board and try to get-
Well, thank you.
I think
just have a lot to do.
Excellent.